Lieutenant Colonel Darren Gaub, retired Black Hawk helicopter pilot and Army Battalion commander, joins me now. So let's take these one at a time, beginning with China. The surprise call yesterday between the president and President Xi. It wasn't previously telegraphed that it was going to happen. President Trump said he had a very positive assessment about the call, the conversation. But there's no question that China remains an adversary of the United States.
Yeah, John, I don't think President Trump would say anything different. I mean, it's okay to have positive communications with people, but also recognize the fact that they've been working against us for many decades to try to subvert our institutions and a whole lot more. The relationship between China and Russia remains strong for a reason. China wants it to be that way, and they're continuing to make inroads into the United States, specifically in many international bodies, as a way to try to use, I guess, soft power against America through places like Venezuela, which we'll get to, and other agencies. I hope it's a positive thing. President Xi is running on some thin ice in China himself with some of the issues going on in the military and their economy. So I think he's looking forward to the possibility of having positive relationships with the United States in some way. And so we'll see where President Trump takes this.
You mentioned it, so let's jump to that next. Venezuela, President Trump says that he's willing to have a conversation with Maduro. People have speculated that the conversation will be short. It would be the president saying, Maduro, do you want to be exiled to Russia or Iran? Your choice. Others are wondering, well, maybe there's a scenario under which Maduro could stay in power, though people don't think is likely. If there were to be a conversation between the president and Maduro, how do you think it would go?
And John, I do think it would also be short. Ultimately, Trump is going to send a message to Maduro saying, hey, we know what you're doing and we know who's helping you, and it's got to stop, because Venezuela is really just a platform, an ideological platform for China to use against America's soft underbelly. They've been trying to continue to make inroads not only through Venezuela, but Brazil, and of course the Panama Canal, trying to control things south of us. So I think that message needs to be passed. I don't think Maduro's going to say a whole lot, but ultimately this message of watching the videos as you're seeing now about us blowing up the drug cartel boats is a message that needs to be heard.
All right. Well, in terms of the message that's being sent, most analysts that I've talked to say that ultimately this is about more than Maduro. It's more than about drug trafficking. It's about getting China's influence out of Venezuela and South America. It's about getting Russia's influence out. It's about getting Iran and its proxies out. But how do you think blowing up these drug boats serves that greater idea?
Well, first of all, it's a message to Maduro and those who continue to freely operate along our southern borders and oceans, that they can't just continue to send the drugs into the United States and poison our people. Let's condense what they've been doing to us, which is, what if a foreign military had invaded America's southern border and killed over 400,000 people? That's essentially what they're doing in a drawn-out process by sending drugs through our border. And that's a terrible thing. And this is one way of doing that without broadening the war into Venezuela or somewhere else specifically, by making sure at least we're interdicting the supply chains for now.
I want to ask you quickly about this Ukraine peace deal. Apparently, Ukraine is very close, or it may already have crossed the finish line in terms of accepting the peace deal. The question is, what will Putin do? What do you think, real quick?
I think we're looking at probably the best chance we're going to get for quite some time. Ukraine is exhausted. They know when they're exhausted. Russia has a chance potentially to end this war for themselves also, with some of the things they've always wanted from the beginning. So I guess I give it greater odds than not right now, and hopefully it actually works out.
Well, let's hope that you're right. And then there's this. Breaking this morning, Fox News has learned that the Justice Department and the FBI have reached out to Capitol Police. They're beginning to set up interviews with the 6 Democrats who are facing backlash for a controversial video. It features lawmakers urging intelligence and military members to refuse so-called illegal orders. The implication is that those would come from President Trump. So far, none of them have been able to name a single illegal order that they've heard of. Yesterday, the Pentagon announced that it is specifically investigating misconduct allegations against Senator Mark Kelly for his appearance in that video. Kelly not backing down, however. He responded saying, if this is meant to intimidate me and other members of Congress from doing our jobs and holding this administration accountable, it won't work. His fellow Arizona Democrat, Senator Ruben Gallego, going to bat for him. Listen here.
There's no reason why they're going after him. He was doing his duty and just reminding people about their rights as service members. You guys. You're not going to be able to scare us. We have a right to defend the Constitution of the United States. We have a right to tell other service members that they have a right to ignore illegal orders, and you're not going to be able to intimidate us.
All right. Well, it's not a Democratic message if it doesn't have swearing in it. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt not holding back. Listen here.
They were leaning into that experience to try and give a wink and a nod to the 1.3 million active duty service members who serve in our United States Armed Forces and essentially encourage them to defy the orders of their commander-in-chief, which is illegal, by the way. You can't have a soldier out on the battlefield or conducting a classified order questioning whether that order is lawful or whether they should follow through.
And retired four-star General Jack Keane fired up about all this. Listen here.
These are irresponsible, reckless political leaders, and I normally don't go after political leaders in our country, but they deserve it now. They're absolutely undermining the military chain of command. And who do they think our soldiers are? They're insulting the intelligence of our soldiers.
Clearly, it has drawn a big backlash, but is it worthy of investigation and worthy of calling Senator Mark Kelly back to active duty so he can face a court-martial?
John, is worthy of both. The investigation should be very short because what they said is there for all of us to see. It's already on the record. So I would imagine this, in my mind, this investigation should take about 45 seconds to maybe 1 minute at the most. And then he gets recalled back on active duty and handled from there. One thing America needs to know is that when someone says courts martial as one option, that's not a guaranteed outcome of guilt or innocence. There's a range of possibilities in between there that a court martial could actually determine. But these six, and starting with the senator from Arizona, all of them need to be held accountable. It's embarrassing. They know exactly what they were saying. They cannot identify illegal orders, but they're encouraging basically a form of insurrection and sedition in our military, which we absolutely cannot have.
All right, Lieutenant Colonel Darren Gaub, thank you for being with us this morning. Really appreciate it, sir, and a happy Thanksgiving to you and your family.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.